or have problems for one reason or another. And kind of jumping in the study here, I'd like to challenge you guys to think about like how these qualities might crop up in your own life. I've found this to always be, every time I read it, it's an introspective journey.
I can definitely agree with that. Even though this is my first time, I was kind of stunned by some of the stuff I was reading, especially in later chapters, where you have more discussions between newly introduced characters and some of these absolutely great. I don't know that they are kind of arguments, but they're arguments from one side and something else coming from the other direction. But just hearing it and being like, wait a minute, I feel like I said that yesterday. Or something very much like that, and kind of just, and seeing myself in these characters in often undesirable manners it's telling. And I've already seen some quotes that I've read just going through the books. And again, I know we're not sticking to chapters 1 and 2, and I'm talking a lot about stuff ahead, but doggone it, C.S. Lewis, you can't contain it to 2 chapters. But I see stuff that's like, that's very Lewis, and that's very, very convicting. So that's definitely going to be something that's going to crop up.
In his always non-condemning way.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Absolutely.
So here we go. The conversation about the city. About Alright, hang on, let me read up a bit. One sec.
Your mic is leaking pretty bad, Goat. It's okay, but just so you know.
Well, when you're talking, there's like background static that we're hearing. For what it's, I'll throw this out. This is a bookseller question. Does anybody know when this was originally published?
I thought the preface said
1945.
1945.
Okay. As you were reading, did anybody find themselves thinking, this was written in 1945? Are you sure it wasn't written within the past 5 years?
Found that with
Just
all
in
C.S. Lewis,
readings.
it always sounds current.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one thing that struck me as I got into it. Even before I really knew what the heck was going on, I was like, this feels strangely current. Doesn't feel like something that was written 70 years ago. This feels like something that was written, about 70 hours ago.
I think that just goes back to why C.S. Lewis is such a great author, is because his writing style just stays current always. He speaks as people.
Yeah.
He doesn't speak as a certain time period.
Right. He doesn't. Trying to think how to put it. That's a good point, Kessa. Fundamentally, it's about human nature, and human nature hasn't changed. Thank you, Ecclesiastes. Nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, I mean, the part where he's talking about, the one guy, who is it? The intelligent man, wanting to set up a police force, get people to do something real for once.
Yeah.
And how there'd be safety in numbers, and then Lewis's character says, "Safety from what?" And the guy kind of ignores him and says, like, if they can get everything by imagining, why would they want any real things, as you call them? And then he replies, well, they'd like houses that really keep out the rain. And he says, their present houses don't? And he says, well, of course not. How could they? And he replies, what the devil use are they? What's the use of building them? And he says, safety, at least the feeling of safety. If it's all right now. It's all right now, but later on, you understand. And like just the inability to really address the main concern, wanting this feeling of safety, this illusion. And then later on, someone else replies talking about how, oh, it's not going to be night like they say when they come. It's going to be it's really going to the twilight's going to turn into day, and everyone's going to be happy.
Into day, yeah.
Isn't that like a major allegory to a lot of the debates that we have today about our very religion?
Yeah. Oh man, that statement. Whew, there's one that hits right on that, but it's in a later chapter, so I'll have to hang on to it. But it was a great one.
Sorry, Serene kisses.
Gord, are you staying in a room with a Tesla
I think
coil?
I fixed it. I am not, but I am staying in a room with a headset that has a broken wire.
Oh.
I
Yeah,
thought you said it was
sound
your.
better.
I thought you said it was your portal.
Yeah, because I moved my mic cord like an inch, and now it's like just hope it doesn't move back.
Also, I'm gonna go out and say this. If you had told me that yes, you were staying in a room with a Tesla coil, I would have thought much more of you.
I'm gonna have to back him up on that statement. Tesla coils are awesome.
I fixed a resident's headphones today with a bad cable.
Nice. The bad cable in mine is on the end that I plug into my computer, so there's really not much fixing it. I would need to like cut it open, then I would have to resplice it, and then I would have to shrink wrap it. No, I don't want to do all that.
Kind of like the way that chapter 2 ended. They really give it some mystery, and you can tell that something very drastic is changing. And he doesn't really give it to you. You just tell that there is something very that there is a vast difference between where they were and where they're going, where they're about to end up. Because the description of everything, even on the bus, changes. And you can kind of see hints of it when they're getting on the bus and everybody's talking bad about the bus driver. You kind of get this sense that there's such a contrast between the way they describe him and the way that the actual passengers are, that the bus driver has seen something is not what's the word, native, I guess. This place, he's not from the Gray City, but he's from somewhere else, and then you start to see that become more visible and more obvious as they actually approach and come to the end of chapter 2, where everything just starts to take on this entirely different appearance.
Lewis is so fair, even with people he disagrees with. He doesn't deny that they can be eloquent.
Yes. Yep. And he plays to that. He continues to play through that through the book. And like I said, I'm not all the way through it, but that definitely plays in. There's this idea of everyone having their own opinion. Well, some opinions are absolutely ridiculous, and some are, just some downright silly. There are others that are very valid, and some people that can express them, like you said, very eloquently. So you have to. That's one thing that I've always liked about Lewis, is that he doesn't so much trash talk anyone. He addresses the issue, but he never does it in a demeaning manner. He's like, I see your point. Here's my point. And that's it. There you go.
And if everybody reading laughs at the contrast, it's not what he set out to do.
Right. Any other thoughts, guys? This is good stuff.
What do you think the starting place represents?
No, I'm not allowed to answer. I've read too far ahead. I know what it is.
Values me out too.
Starting places in the Gray City?
Yes.
In the Gray City.
What is the Gray City?
Well, first I thought it was
Hell.
representative of hell, but then I thought about it more and think it's more representative of some kind of limbo or purgatory.
Okay.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is. It is funny. We can't tell you why, but that's funny. Just keep reading. You'll find out why it's funny. I'll just say this. Thanks, George.
I was just gonna ask if you got to that part.
I have gotten to that part.
George.
That's
Meet
a
'em later.
that's a really funny part of the book, actually. That also had some of the best lines that I've read thus far. But that's still several chapters away.
I think this book represents probably Lewis's biggest break from what we'd call Orthodox Christianity, but I don't
Yes.
think it's a bad thing.
More than anything, what C.S. Lewis does in all of his writings that I've read so far is he makes you think. He'll take a very complex idea, and he can boil it down into something that isn't necessarily an entirely accurate summation of it, but it's to the point where it's accurate enough and it makes sense to the human mind for us to grasp it. And then he challenges you with that to say, do you agree with this? And I think in what I've read so far, I see that a little bit more poignantly than in a lot of his other works.
Yeah.
Particularly, again, referring back to its last question, what is the Gray City? Because, well, I'll save that for later. I was gonna, as I'm reading this, there's a name that came to mind, a contemporary author who's written a number of books and I'm listening to this and I'm like, I can hear traces of this and I don't know how I feel about it.
Which author?
I don't want to give away anything, so give us a second.
You can pay it to me.
Yeah,
I'd like to know too.
that one.
A little bit.
Yeah, you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, I do. I
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
Okay, no one wants to feel excluded. That's fine.
We're not excluding you. It's just information that we don't want to spoil anything.
Well, I will say
until-
this. I will say this. This comes up in a couple of Lewis's writings. I think he mentions it in Mere Christianity. I'm not 100% on that, if it was that one or one of his other works, but he's mentioned a couple times his belief that the gates of hell are locked from the inside. That people who aren't in heaven have made a decisive, full-knowing decision to not be there, to separate themselves from the source of life, and that's why they're in hell.
That sounds like something that might be in Mere Christianity. I would have to reread it to be sure.
That invalidates Southern Baptist and Catholicism.
Good thing I'm not a Southern Baptist. Yes! I'm just a Baptist in the South.
Oh.
But that's a central theme to this book as well,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
that's all I'll say.
Yes. And that's that point of Lewis making you think.
Is there a reason why football is in the quiet group in here?
Football's not really in here.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Also, let's be nice to football. Or at least be compassionate to football.
What's wrong with football?
100% the point.
I'll explain later. I'll tell you later. Let's see. What did you guys think of the discussion about Napoleon?
Seems about right for what I picture Napoleon doing. Just kind of fits.
I'm trying to think of a way to ask this question without giving too much away.
Watched him for about a year, and he never rested, pacing back and forth.
Yeah.
It was Solt's fault, it was Ney's fault, it was Josephine's fault. It was the fault of the Russians, it was the fault of the English. Like that all the time, never stopped for a moment.
Little fat man, he looked kind of tired, but he didn't seem able to stop it. That is an interesting summation and a focus upon a certain characteristic of Napoleon's. What did you draw out of that? Because that, I think, is a certain key to some of the questions we've already asked earlier. What in particular struck you about that description about Napoleon?
I actually know more about Josephine, by which to say I don't know much about either of them. But if I recall correctly, he divorced her because she couldn't have a child.
Okay.
And married someone else on purely self-advancement grounds because he wanted to be Emperor of France and he wanted to have an heir.
Okay. What's the one thing you note about everything about Napoleon's actions?
Blaming other people.
Okay. Which indicates what? He's focusing on what?
His failure.
Yes. The negative, his own failure, his shortcomings. No pun intended. But he can't. There's nothing positive in his speech or in his behaviors. He couldn't help. They said he couldn't help, but he didn't seem to be able to stop it. Everything about his actions was he was compelled to focus on the negative. While we're on that subject, what did you think about the description of the Gray City? How big did they say the Gray City was?
Light years.
It took
It's
years
infinite.
to walk out to the far away parts.
Yeah, it took 15,000 years in their time to reach Napoleon.
In a time when the sun doesn't ever go down or come up.
Right. Like, would they ever? The question that Lewis's character asked, he says, "Will they ever get to the bus stop in time if they ever set out?" And there's the intellectual man answer. He said, "Well, theoretically, but it'd be a distance of light years, and they wouldn't want to by now. Not those old chaps like Tamburlaine or Genghis Khan or Caesar or Henry V."
Seem like they wouldn't even want to try. Seem like it's too much work.
Mm-hmm. Just amazing. It's just really amazing. You know, they say that hindsight's 20/20, but when you look back on stuff, it's like, oh wow. So, this book, like I said, I just started reading it today. I'm sitting at home, and I was like, well, might as well read. I thought it was the first 3 chapters I was supposed to read. So I read the first 2, and I read the third, and then I would look down at the page, and I was like, oh, I'm on chapter 7. Well, I don't have anything else to do.
So wait, so if you've gotten a McDonald, have you finished the book?
I have not yet finished the book. I'm close, but I'm not there.
I was gonna say, because I think McDonald's the last person he talks to.
Yeah. Don't give too much away.
Ah, of course not. Of course not.
He is... I can't say that. Okay.
Sound familiar?
I wonder who wrote that.
You know, Lewis was a fan of Chesterton.
Shut up.
Yeah, Chesterton and MacDonald were two of Lewis's biggest influences
Yes.
in writing.
Mm-hmm. Chesterton laid the foundation. Lewis perfected it.
In fact, in no small part because of Chesterton and also because of Tolkien,
Mm-hmm.
I think Lewis has said that he would be Catholic if not for having to accept the writings and the sayings of all the popes that come after he'll be alive.
Yes.
Eh.
Yeah, Tolkien was. I knew that Tolkien was very instrumental in pulling Lewis to. I guess you would qualify him as Anglican. I guess. But yeah, he was very. Tolkien was instrumental in that, and I had heard that Chesterton was as well, but I hadn't actually done any study into that. Give me a sec. I'll be right back, guys.
His last words.
No, we should read sometime is Lewis's testimony autobiography, where he talks about his life and how he became a Christian.
You mean Surprised by Joy?
Yeah. Because he was raised in a Christian household and then he fell away and came full circle after many years.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back. I was just saying how we should read Surprised by Joy at some point.
Yeah. Another good one.
That's
I mean,
Lewis's testimonial autobiography.
I was gonna say it's C.S. Lewis, so they're just some authors we should throw up. You know, if this name is on a book, it's fine. Oh man. Any other thoughts or questions, guys?
That's like there's a lot of thoughts and a lot of reactions, but it's hard to boil them down as well as Lewis does. It makes one self-conscious.
Yeah, you get the feeling when you're reading this that Lewis is writing a lot of this from experience or observation of people around him. This isn't stuff that he just conjured out of his own head. He's like, I've had experiences like this before, and he used that to influence a lot of the things that he wrote.
I recognize dynamics that, not all of them, of course, but some of the dynamics he brings up later I lived with. Yeah, he knew what he was talking about. And the way he can boil it down to one or two sentences, such that one can go find it in a psychiatric book and go, oh yeah, here it is.
Yeah. I just that's one of the things that has endeared Lewis the most to me is that I have to take, you know, you guys make fun of me all the time for the fact that I can't make anything short. I have to take an hour to say anything. C.S. Lewis, he's like, I could say that in about 12 words. I'm like, could you teach me how to do this? Conciseness and clarity of thought are not things that I have in spades, if at all.
Well, that's a discussion for another time. I won't sidetrack the book discussion.
I wish you guys were further. There's so much more to talk about.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, there's so much, but we can't get there because we're just too in.
Well, and
right.
I think some of the
Made us
stuff we'd like
stop.
to talk about here, we can't because it references further on.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, as we go, we'll probably end up talking about chapter 1 and 2 again.
Oh, yeah. And even the book itself comes back and keeps talking about these chapters. You can't... The important thing is here is that these chapters are very important to the rest of the book. So what you read here is going to be brought up again and again and again, and it's going to be constantly referenced, and it's going to. I think the thing that Lewis does so well in this book is that he gives you this opening scenario and doesn't really tell you anything about it, forces you to form your own opinions of it, and then as you proceed on, he kind of gradually gives you. He feeds you bits and pieces of it so that you begin to understand where you come from and then what's happened in light of that.
I remember now. The bit I talked about before, the gates of hell being closed to the inside. It
Yes.
wasn't Mere Christianity. It was his answer to the argument, or was it? It was either Mere Christianity or Problem of Pain. It was his
I read
answer to the argument where, the argument of, well, why would you serve a God that condemns those who haven't heard about him to hell?
Right.
And his answer was basically, that he believes that everyone gets a fair shake, or that the possibility that everyone can get a fair shake means that you shouldn't let that discourage you.
Anybody hear the whispers of Calvinism echoing somewhere off in the distance?
You mean Calvin turning over in his grave?
Yeah. All we would have to do is just stick wrap him in copper wire, and we would have it like a magnet forever.
I contend that even the most hard determinist still looks both ways before they cross the street.
Ah!
Well said. Okay, any other thoughts, guys? This has been really good. I'm enjoyed this discussion so far. Oh, it's my sister.
I'm trying to find that
Hello.
last quote.
Sister is phenomenally late.
Sissel had to stop and get gas and groceries because storm is a coming.
Live on a mountain, so yeah, things are probably projected to be a little worse up there.
What kind of storm?
Depends on where you're at.
Mostly ice from last I checked.
Okay.
Hang on, let me check what the weather is saying now, because I'm in the valley, you're on the mountain. So the valley could be a little different.
So any rain you guys get turns into ice.
The ice
almost
up for you.
immediately up here.
Let's see. Some clouds right now. Yeah, looks like great.
At least you're not in Hawaii. Oh man.
Let's see. When are they calling for it?
I'm not sure. Mom told me.
I'm getting groceries for a storm that could be coming in a few weeks. We don't know.
Milk and bread! Milk and bread!
There is an Arctic front. I know moving down into Texas, I still have that weather app on my phone,
Nice.
so it might be the same.
Hang on. I need to do that.
No, I know Texas had bad weather. A friend of mine who lives there sent me a picture of the snow he was shoveling. It buried him.
Wow.
Yep. It's nice and sunny here in Colorado. No
Nobody loves a
snow.
braggart.
There was
No snow.
there was a ballistic missile scare in Hawaii yesterday.
Nice.
Really?
The emergency alert system went off.
Oh, yeah, I
Road
heard about
signs,
this.
text messages,
What?
sirens, the works.
Mhm.
Yep.
I
And
did
the
hear
false
about
alarm statement didn't go out for a half hour, so people were freaked out.
Where was this go?
Hawaii.
Oh,
Why?
People were putting kids down in storm drains and under manhole covers, and this one guy, someone made a Reddit thread that was like, "Did you do anything impulsive, and do you regret it now?" And someone talked about how they ate 2 full loaves of bread because it was gonna be their last chance to eat something.
So your last meal was 2 loaves of bread. Hashtag life
YOLO.
choices.
And he did regret it because he no longer had any bread.
Wait, he had bread
Oh.
and no pineapple?
Seriously, you're in Hawaii, man. I don't see anything for precipitation until Monday, as in a week from tomorrow.
It's always good to be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, if I change my zip code to where you're at, then things might change a little bit.
Yeah. Well, see, that's just the thing. Like, any water from any of the precipitation that we did get that is still on the roads is now ice.
Yep.
And
And where you're at, that's Denagon.
Fred's truck was stuck in the mud that froze. So
Frozen mud.
Then there's
Lovely.
that.
It's not enjoyable.
I just tried to open my trunk to put the groceries in it and couldn't. Because my trunk was frozen.
It's a shame none of your kids are teething. You could have used their jaw.
What?
I don't think I want my